Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Family Treehouse, a podcast series brought to you by Storied, where I chat with people who have a passion for genealogy, storytelling, or both. I am your host, Heather Haunert, and today I am very excited to get to chat with Aimee Cross. Aimee has been researching her family for 40 years. When I wrote that, Aimee, I'm like, there is no way that that is even possible. And she's professionally been consulting for 10. She specializes in US research and has completed more than 250 client projects. That's incredible. She has an amazing website, Ancestry Consulting with Aimee, and her YouTube channel is full of fantastic videos. So, Aimee, we are so excited to welcome you to the show today.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yes, it's true. I'm that old.
You started when you were one.
No, I wish that were true. But I did start when I was a teenager. So do the
Well,
math. Let's not do the math too hard.
well, that takes us to our first question. I always love for people just to kind of tell us about their background. How did you get started in the field of family history and or storytelling?
I was one of those weird kids that loved to hear the stories.
Yeah.
And old people didn't scare me. Some people are just they intimidate them. And I would love to sit at a great uncle or my grandma's feet and hear what it was like when they were kids. I don't know, it just fascinated me. And I love antiques. I just love things that tell stories. And so, anyway, on the bookshelf behind me, it's all like, besides some books, it's all family stuff, and everything back there has a story. So I just love that. I just love things that tell stories. And I think about things that like I have an antique sewing machine in my office and that my grandmother gave me. And I wonder what was sewn on this machine
Yes.
this is probably 100 years old now. What has this machine produced all those years ago? I just love just hearing the stories.
Yeah.
And I'm the only granddaughter on both sides of my family. And so my grandmothers both just kind of took me in and love to tell me their stories and share their love of finding out about their family. And they both, in their own ways, were genealogists. They love to find out more about their ancestry and where they came from. They did it differently,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that was really fun for me to hear that from them. And they kind of stuck that bug in me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I love that. And I think you're so right about just the objects having stories. I think that all the time. Wow, the stories that that object could tell. We would love to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Aimee, tell us why you think storytelling is such an important part of family history.
Well, if you don't have some story to go with it, it's just a name and a date. And it's so much less personal. I mean, even if people aren't trying to dive in to write more detailed stories like you guys are working to see happen, which I love, they you still want to find out more about the person. And whenever I do my videos on YouTube, I'm always telling people, look at the image, always look at the image. So often people just look at whatever's indexed on the page, and that's a fraction of what that document can tell them. Like on a draft card, you could find out if they had a scar or a missing hand or finger, or if their height, their weight, their hair color, things that you may not know. You may not have a picture of that individual. And so, a census record can tell you whether or not in some years they had a radio or if they had served in a war. There's just a lot of really fantastic things that can come out of just a regular record, let alone a newspaper, which is like a bonanza of great information. And so, and I feel like, the objective is sometimes when you're doing family history to find out your ancestry, to discover where you came from. Maybe you want to know, you know, what countries you came from and stuff like that. That's great. But as you get closer to these ancestors that you descend from, it changes the experience and it makes it more personal and makes it more meaningful. And it honestly changes you. And one of the things that I love about family history is when you find those stories about your family, your gratitude level's gonna go up. I can guarantee it. Because once you start to see some of the things that your family endured to be where they were or to make life possible for indirectly you,
Yeah.
it just makes you think, man, I've got it good. I am so lucky, you know, and I'm so grateful that they did what they did so that I can have what I have.
Yeah. I you hit the nail on the head. I love that it just brings you closer to them. I think that's so true. So true. More so than any just name or date does. That's great. Love that. Went straight to my heart today. Uh, Aimee, how do you have a certain formula when you write a story? Is there a certain, kind of formula you go through, or you just wing it? How do you go about writing stories?
Oh my goodness. I don't. I wish I could say that I do. That would be great. I'm not a good writer. I'm not even a very good speaker occasionally. People can tell my grammar stinks. I'm a wing it kind of gal. If I'm giving a presentation, I have an outline and I very rarely read off script. When I do, I come across very not good.
Yeah.
And so even with my YouTube videos, I've tried because I have friends that for YouTube, they write things out and they even, they'll use like a teleprompter type thing. They
Yeah.
have apps for
Yeah.
your phones and stuff like that. That
Yeah.
is the kiss of death for me.
Yeah.
I come across so differently. And so even though I don't sound as professional, even though I may sometimes mispronounce something or even use improper grammar, I'm me. And
Yeah.
and that just comes out better that way. And my stories are the same way. When I write a story, I just kind of shoot from the hip. With
Yeah.
AI, I mean, that was one of the things I saw you guys at Roots Tech the first year you were there, a year and a half ago. And one of the things that I loved about what you guys were doing was that AI assist in the story writing because I need that help.
Yeah.
And I tried it out and I just gave some basic information on a picture that I had, and the AI gave me information, which was my great start. Then I could go through and I could make the changes and I could make the story more what I was wanting to say and correct. There was a number of things that were incorrect, but that was great. It gave me the start. So
Great.
for somebody like me, I love that because I am not super creative when it comes to writing, and it's not a strength.
Yeah.
So
I, I'm glad that you embrace that. And I think it's important that people know that. I think so many times I think we do have to have, a scripted formula and you have to do this when you're writing. And I think it's important for them to know it's okay if you don't have that. So it's great.
yeah.
Amy, do you have any recommended resources or tools that think about people that are just really starting out in family history? That seems to be, people that are attracted to Storied are people that have never done any kind of family history work at all. So do you have any resources or tools or just suggestions in general that you would have for people that are truly just starting out?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going to toot my own horn here, but my son approached me about doing my YouTube channel a couple of years before I did, and I should have because that was before COVID, and that would have been a good thing. But I didn't. I was in the middle of moving and redoing a house, and I was doing a lot of the work, and I couldn't. So when I did, I've really learned as I've done this channel, I've really learned to appreciate that YouTube is an awesome way to get some instruction where you're getting short videos to kind of help you think about one thing or maybe think about something else.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the channel.
Yeah.
So I think that's obviously a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
But there are other places that you can go to. You can go to friends that you have that may be into it. You can just do web searches for different information and tutorials. You can any website, like you guys, I'm sure have a ton I haven't even looked at them, but you have a ton of tutorials.
Yep.
Ancestry has a ton of tutorials, right? That's just part of any website that hosts, genealogy. They all have that information. And then the other thing that most people aren't aware of is that usually you have a local genealogical society wherever you live. And if you have the time and you can go to one of their meetings or connect with some of the people that are in the genealogical society, then you can have some face-to-face help as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great way. One of my actual favorite things that I do other than the YouTube channel is I coach.
Yeah.
And so people can sign up for my coaching and we do it via Zoom, and you can either be in a group class or an individual class. And the whole reason I ramped that up is because that's my favorite thing. When I was doing a lot of projects for clients, I was working through another party and I never spoke to the client. And I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear their stories. I mean, it was a great job, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to hear their stories. I wanted to hear what this was meaning to them. And so that's one of the reasons I really do love to coach, because I love to cheer somebody on, direct them to what they maybe haven't thought about, or just help them get started in building their family tree. So that's another option for people if they, don't have somebody nearby they can turn to. They can go to somebody that has more experience and ask them to coach them and do that as well. But don't let it stop you. You know what I mean? If you think that you can't do this, that you're wrong. You can
Yeah.
do it. That's the whole reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. I want people to know you can do it, you can find your family, and it's tremendously rewarding. So give it a try.
Yeah, and I think that they don't, they're concerned that they don't have enough information. And that's what people like you are for, to help
Yeah.
them find that information. So good tips. And I love YouTube. You can't say enough about, just the vast array of tutorials you can find on just
I just
about
like
anything.
Yeah, and I just like being able to see it. There's
Yes.
also actually
Yeah.
a lot of podcasts out there, and I like to listen to podcasts, but when I'm doing genealogy, I want to see it.
Yep.
I'm
Agree.
a very visual, personally, I'm a very visual learner. So I want to see what you're talking about when you're talking about it. And so with other things, I enjoy a podcast if somebody's just maybe talking about something. But for genealogy, I really do love to be able to see what they're talking about. It helps me be more, I think, successful in whatever it is that I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, I think it helps too that they're just usually short snippets and not something that you have to invest a lot of time in. I think that's
Yeah.
helpful. Well, Amy, my very favorite part is always asking people what is a story that you love to share about your family?
Um, oh my goodness, there's so many of them. I I was just thinking about this the other day. This doesn't paint my dad in a super great light, but my dad is awesome. He passed away a couple of years ago, but on my on my patio, I have a glass top table that was my grandmother's. See, I'm going back to furniture. This is weird. I hadn't even thought of that. And my kids were all here just recently, and so I'm in the process now of cleaning and putting things back. And I was cleaning the table just yesterday afternoon, and I was thinking back about this history of this table. And it's an iron table with a glass top on it. And my grandmother had it on her patio when my dad was a kid. And then when my dad, at some point, my dad had a house and he needed a table, and he brought that in to be his kitchen table. So when I was a kid, I had that was a kitchen table in our house. Well, one day my dad loved to debate. He would play devil's advocate just to make you think around a problem. And so we would have these really deep conversations in my family about all sorts of things. And sometimes I would say to him later, Dad, you don't even believe that, do you? And he didn't. He was just trying to make me think about the other perspective, which I tremendously value today. But there was one day we were talking about something and he got really passionate and he put his hand down on the table and it like hit his fork or something like that, and the glass just cracked across the whole table.
Oh,
And so I was thinking about that because the glass piece that got put in the table to replace it doesn't fit it perfectly, so you can't really take it out very easily. And I was trying to clean it. So that's the most recent story that I've been thinking about because I was just cleaning that table. So anyway, but I just love the stories we had around that table,
yeah,
and hearing the different thoughts and the different perspectives. And that's honestly one of my favorite memories as a kid
yeah,
is having those conversations around the table. That was
yeah,
super fun.
yeah. And I love that you still have the table. I mean, that's the best part that you still have it. That's a great story. Amy, as we finish up here, any last tidbits, tricks, or ideas for people to share?
I would just say I guess my biggest tip is, well, it's a two-part tip. One, when you start, you're going to make mistakes
Yeah,
and you're going to have wrong things in your tree, and it's okay,
yeah,
and if somebody copies it, that's their fault.
yeah,
Don't like get super, super concerned about that. It's just part of the process.
yeah.
But the second thing, my biggest tip would be please write down where you get your information. I have a video called sourcing, and somebody said your video should really be citations. And I'm like, that's a more intimidating word. I purposefully didn't use that word in my video. I never use the word citation because a lot of people, when they hear the word citation, they're like, oh, this is like really academic, and that's not
Yes.
who I am. I just want you to write down why you know a bit of information, because I didn't always do that when I built my family tree when I started as a teenager. And I go back and look at things and I don't know where the information came from.
Yeah.
So even if you just put it on next to a fact, and most fact places have description boxes or whatever. There's lots of different ways to quickly do it. You don't have to attach a super formal source. I mean, you can, but you
Yeah.
don't have to. But even if you just write because Grandma Georgette told me so, you know what I
Yes.
mean? This is
Yep.
this is how I know this information. And then that way, when you do get additional information at some point, then you can better evaluate where that information came from, because then you can say, well, maybe she had incorrectly, remembered this fact if I'm finding something that conflicts with it later or
Yep.
something like that. I think that's the biggest thing, is just try, as you're building your trees, especially initially, try to make sure you're very clear on how you figured out what you know in a note somewhere, or even if you keep like a little running like kind of note on the side. There's so many different ways to do it. I don't care how you do it. It does not have to be done any particular way, but
Yeah.
just do it somehow.
I think it's that kind of going back to school and thinking, having to write those essays and citing your sources. And I love how you said that. It doesn't matter how you get that information, just write something down. I do
Yeah.
that all, even if it's just a web link. I mean, I do that sometimes. Oh, I found it at this website, or, whatever. Great advice. That was very good
Yeah.
advice. Love that.
Thanks.
Well, Aimee, thank you so much for your just expertise and passion that you have for our field. I told you when I got on the phone call with Aimee today, I said she just radiates sunshine for me. Every time I see her, she's just always just so pleasant to be around. So thank you for spending time with me today and with our audience. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Well, until next time, friends, embrace the power of your family's untold tales and embark on a journey of discovery. Let the ink flow and the words dance as you weave together the threads of your ancestors' lives. Start writing your family stories today and let their voices echo through the generations to come at storied.com. Have a great day, everyone. And that brings us to the end of this episode of the Family Treehouse, where we celebrate the power of storytelling and preserving our family legacies. Storied is more than just a platform for sharing stories. Dive into those historical records and newspapers, discovering the hidden gems that bring your ancestors to life. Add branches to your family tree, connecting the dots between generations. Thank you for joining us on this storytelling journey. Your stories matter, and through Storied, they have the power to resonate across time and touch the hearts of generations to come. Keep uncovering your family's history and keep the spirit of storytelling alive with Storied.